European Endurance from Mugello. We said goodbye to you last year in Misano, and we are back to Italy for the first race of 2025 season. We are in the pit lane with our promoter, Mauricio Slaviero. Welcome and good morning, Mauricio.
Thank you, Antonio. Very good morning to everyone. We are really happy to be here. We finished last year in Italy. We start this year in Italy again. Now in this wonderful circuit of Mugello. That's a dream for all drivers to really race here. We are really happy. 19 drivers here. So we are really improving a lot, and I'm sure that this season will be a great one.
Mechanics are getting back from the grid. All the cars are on the starting grid. In a few minutes, the formation lap. An amazing weather also today. Dump track yesterday in quali. We see some cloud in the back. Dump track as well this morning starting, but everyone is on slick, so we expect a lot of show from this first stage of the year.
For sure, the race will be very a tough one for everyone. We'll start a little bit with the wet circuit, but for sure we'll drive very quickly. So I think that the conditions will be very interesting to everybody to see. And as usually in TCR, a lot of fights, and will be an emotional race for sure.
And so now it's time to enjoy the show.
And what better way to start off the 2025 TCR European Endurance season than with the words of the series promoter Mauricio Slaviero. A warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world. We are ready to get the show going here in Mugello. I am Daniele Spadi and I will be your commentator today for stage number 1 of the opening race of the 2025 season. We are so excited to be back, of course, in such an iconic racetrack like Mugello. For the first time, the TCR European Endurance show gets to the Tuscan racetrack. Of course, one of the most iconic and historic circuits in not only Italy but the entire world as well. And we are ready to get the action going with the formation lap ready to begin, and we see the cars ready to start off their journey race-wise in the season. And what better way to start than to have a look at the grid, the starting grid of the opening race of the season. Of course, Stage 1, we'll see 55 minutes of racing plus 1 lap, where the teams will have to make a mandatory pit stop throughout this opening half of the race. And in pole position, we see on the left-hand side of the grid, the number 3 car of BF Motorsport making their debut as a team in the championship, taking pole position yesterday in a wet qualifying, the first ever wet qualifying in the history of the championship, with Alessandro Alcidi and Yuri Brigliadori, the latter one, taking the start in stage number 1 in car number 3 that we see with the white, red and blue livery on the left hand side of the screen. And on the right hand side, Wimmerwerk Motorsport, the Austrian team, making an impressive debut in their first ever participation to the TCR European Endurance Championship with the number 6 car of Salvatore Tavano, who is in the car, a 3-time TCR Italy champion. So not the latest one to get to know such a car. And then of course his teammate Eric Scalvini getting ready to make his debut officially in a race, which will happen later down the line this morning. The formation lap is now underway with the cars ready to start. We have 18 drivers this season tackling the opening race, a sign of huge growth for the championship after what we had last year. Of course, getting things going is very tough for a championship, and it's so nice to see these many cars and of course such a high number of drivers tackling the opening race of the season, with drivers going towards turn 1. And I think this is a great moment to start talking about the racetrack itself. Of course, Mugello being one of the most iconic racetracks not only in Italy but in Europe as well. 5,245 meters long with 15 corners, 6 to the left, 9 to the right, following a clockwise path in a racetrack that was built in 1972 and then opened 2 years later. It's been a staple of Italian racing in the last few years, and not only that, of course, hosting European and world racing from season to season. Endurance-wise, of course, having a 24-hour series with the 12 hours of Mugello, and then talking about TCR experience, of course, TCR Italy racing here basically every season, using the racetrack as one of the most important race weekends of its season. And naturally, TCR European Endurance couldn't miss the opportunity to start off their year in style here in Mugello. It's the first time that the championship comes to such an iconic racetrack, and of course, The drivers were very excited, especially we saw the number 72 car of Sandro Pelatti, who is native of the region here, and so he will be very excited to get things going on his home turf, and of course trying to replicate what he did in Misano last year, winning race number 3 of the season, fighting for the championship right until the end. We were talking about the starting grid, and Pelatti will be on the second row in third place alongside the DSG pole sitter Senna Summerbell in the all-Jamaican car, the number 32, also of Wimmerwerk Motorsport. Behind them, Ibrahim Okiai with a leading Gen 1 car. Of course, we have 3 categories that we'll be explaining later down the stage. Okiai starting in 5th with car number 1, alongside Edoardo Maccari in the number 8. Then it's Alessio Alcidi with Zekai Özen. And in the 5th and final row of the grid, Daniele Verrocchio and Stefano Moretti, with the drivers now getting ready in pairs, going towards the final corner of the racetrack, turn number 15, and getting ready to get the action going for the 2025 TCR European Endurance season. We'll see on the left-hand side of the screens Yuri Brigliadori in his number 3 car, brother of last year's overall champion Eric Brigliadori with Texaco Team AMS, and this time Brigliadori with Yuri in the car, the number 3. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, Salvatore Tavano with the number 6, as we get the action going in just a few seconds, with the green lights going off now, and the 2025 TCR European Endurance season is officially underway. And it's a great launch by Yuri Brigliadori, who seems to be keeping things under control, especially towards turn 1. It's a long way before drivers have to brake for the first corner. Watch out for Pelatti and on the outside of turn 1, but the top 3 stays put after the start, with Tavano now very close to the back of Brigliadori, trying to maybe take the inside towards turn 2, but he has to back out, whereas it was a great start by the Texaco TMS pair, with Ibrahim Okiai now in 4th and Zekai Özen immediately on the move up into 6th position behind Senna Summerbell in what is the fight for the DSG lead. But watch out for Pelatti, who tries to make a move down the side of turn 3 and 4, as we see the entire cars and the entire grid without any issues. And the best start was for Salvatore Tavano. Eventually he got the lead probably into turns 3 and 4, as the number 6 car is now up and away towards sector 2, as we now see Yuri Brigliadori trying to fend off Sandro Pelatti and desperately trying to take back the lead, whereas Zekai Özen has taken the DSG lead from Senna Summerbell, the Jamaican driver having now to settle for 6th position, as we now move towards the 3rd sector of the racetrack, where watch out for Summerbell, who goes right around the outside of Okiai to take back the lead in the DSG category immediately. Some great action with Edoardo Maccari in the number 8 Volkswagen Golf TGI, trying to fight his way through. The same can be said for Alessio Alcidi and Stefano Moretti, with Daniele Verrocchio in the mix as well, as we finish lap number 1. Let's remember, it's 55 minutes plus 1 lap in this opening stage of the season, with Senna Summerbell now up the inside of the Gen 1 car of Ibrahim Okiai, and Zekai Özen immediately follows suit to try and stay with Summerbell, but it's Salvatore Tavano in the lead after the opening 5.2 kilometers of the stage number 1. The 3-time TCR Italy champion showing his talent and, of course, his racecraft by staying close to Yuri Brigliadori after the latter got a great start off the line and then taking P1 right after the end of sector number 1. And here we can see the DSG battle still going on, with Senna Summerbell keeping 4th position from Zekai Özen's attacks, with Edoardo Maccari and Daniele Verrocchio in 7th and 8th, fighting for the last spot on the DSG podium. Of course, the race is very long. We'll have stage number 2 later this afternoon, but the news for 2025 is the championship awarding points for each individual stage as well, with 16 points going to the stage winner, 14 to 2nd position, and 12 to 3rd place in the overall standings, which will be of great help for those who could eventually have some issues in one of the 2 stages. they will still be able to bring home some very valuable points for their title assault later down the line. Drivers now are coming towards the final part of the second lap, whereas Salvatore Tavano is immediately trying to build a gap over Yuri Brigliadori. Right now it's at roughly 2 seconds between the number 6 Cupra and the number 3 Audi. We have 3 different constructors here with Audi, Volkswagen and Cupra. And here we see now the graphics with the final standings with 51 minutes and 5 seconds to go as we enter lap number 3. And here we see Salvatore Tavano building a nice gap over Yuri Brigliadori, 2.9 seconds, as Tavano set the fastest lap of the race, whereas we see now from race control a 10-second time penalty for car number 38, driven by Alessio Alcidi for failing to respect the starting procedure. So the number 38 will be penalized with 10 seconds, which will be added to the final classification. Penalties cannot be served in the mandatory pit stop, which, let's remember, it has a minimum duration of 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So then the car number 38 will be fortunately penalized by 10 seconds at the end of the opening stage of this year, as we see Salvatore Tavano trying to build a gap over car number 3. Yuri Brigliadori still making his way, trying to warm up the tires. It's a very cold morning here in Mugello, as Antonio with Maurizio Slaviero was saying at the start of our broadcast. Of course, the rain falling on both occasions, on Friday and Saturday, with now the sun shining on the racetrack, but of course the road still being slightly damp from yesterday. And here is Sandro Pelatti. We were talking about the Tuscan driver, of course, in his home race, in his home region. Nevertheless, with the number 72 car, which will then be driven by 3-time champion Franco Girolami, with the Argentinian being the TCR Europe champion in both 2022 and 2024, winning TCR Italy in 2023. Of course, he's looking for his 4th consecutive title on the TCR level. Most definitely one of the most acclaimed drivers on the starting grid, together with our current leader Salvatore Tavano, who won the TCR Italy crown from 2018 to 2020. As we now start lap number 4, Tavano has built a nice 3.2 second gap over Yuri Brigliadori, who is, however, starting to find his rhythm. He's only lost 2.5 tenths in the previous lap, with Tavano setting the fastest lap with a 1 minute 59.003. As we now see the fight for the lead in the DSG standings, with Senna Summerbell in 4th position and Zekai Özen following closely behind in 5th. Meanwhile, here is the fight for the last place on the DSG podium, with Edoardo Maccari and Alessio Alcidi. An all-Italian battle, with the number 38 behind the number 8 Audi of Tudor Motorsport. The two teammates trying to navigate the first half of the race in the best possible way, although, of course, we have to remember that Alcidi has a 10-second penalty for failing to respect the starting procedure earlier in this opening stage, which is now seeing Salvatore Tavano trying to still build a gap with Brigliadori, now starting to make some inroads on the Italian, with purple sectors in both Sector 1 and Sector 2. As Brigliadori showed in free practice and, of course, in qualifying, taking pole in very difficult conditions. He's shown to be at ease with not only the car but the truck as well, especially in damp conditions. We can see still some patches, some darker patches on the tarmac, signaling some damp parts of the circuit, which will be, of course, very tricky to pass on. But so far, Brigliadori has to bring the gap down from 3.2 seconds. He's doing that very nicely this lap, as Tavano now crosses the line. It's another 59 flat for him, but a 158.1 for Yuri Brigliadori, who is definitely looking to be racy now, gaining 9/10 on Salvatore Tavano and a whopping 1.7 seconds on Sandro Pelatti, who's still in third place, still holding on to the overall podium so far. Though, of course, being an endurance race, this is definitely not the end. It's only the beginning for our drivers, as Pelatti is then building a nice gap over the DSG lead of Senna Samabel, who still has the Kai Özden in his rear view mirror, though the Jamaican has gained roughly 6/10 in the previous lap. And here you can see the fight for the lead with the number 6, who's trying desperately to hold off Yuri Brigliadori, who is, however, definitely gaining on the number 6. Both cars, of course, being with a sequential gearbox. We were talking about this at the start of our broadcast. We have 3 different categories here on track. Of course, the overall classification is for everyone, but will definitely be contested by the 3 most recent cars, which are the ones that we see in the top 3 so far. 3 cars with sequential gearbox of the latest generation. We also have the Gen 1 standings, which are reserved for those cars who have not received any updates since 2018, as per technical notifications released by the WSC, whereas we now have an issue with one of the cars. It's fortunately one of the Volkswagen. Seems to be Daniele Verrocchio in the number 33. Yes, it is. Not a great start for Faro Racing. Seems to be an issue to the front left, as the car unfortunately has to pull over at the end of Sector 2, which would likely mean that the number 33 will be out of stage 1 after, unfortunately, 10 minutes of running. And what a shame for Faro Racing, of course, one of the teams that was present at the end of last year. Unfortunately, though, their Volkswagen Golf GTI seems to have an issue of big proportions, which is why Verrocchio has pitted early, of course, using the escape road that goes out of turn 6. As unfortunately we see the car now being worked on by the Faro Racing team, which was, of course, wanting a better start to their season. They still have one car. It's Stefano Moretti in the number 5, who's currently holding 9th place, trying to get closer to Leonardo Cupari in the number 33. And Daniele Verrocchio, but of course they are now in the pits. As we now go back to the images covering the top 2, which are closer and closer. In the last 5 minutes especially, Yuri Brigliadori has gained roughly 2 seconds since he started to push. As Salvatore Tavano is now on the defensive, but the 3-time TCR Italy champion knows how to handle the pressure, and he knows how to work on such a difficult situation, whereas car number 38 seems to have its penalty cancelled as per race direction. So definitely some good news for Tudor Motorsport right there, as the number 38 is now back in contention for a DSG podium spot. Right now they are in 4th place in the category, 7th overall. That's the number 38 car, who has unfortunately now just dropped down to 8th. So they're definitely trying to get that place back on Edoardo Maccari, who's doing a great job so far in 3rd place in the DSG standings, whereas car number 8 is now under investigation for not respecting the starting procedure, and that is Edoardo Maccari. So unfortunately for him, his fate will be decided in the next few minutes by race direction. As we now see Yuri Brigliadori almost under a second, the gap between the 2 of them, whereas here we can see, unfortunately, the replay of the issue that put Daniele Verrocchio out of running in the opening 10 minutes of stage number 1 in the opening race of the 2025 TCR European Endurance season here at the Mugello circuit, with Salvatore Tavano leading in the number 6 Wimmenwerk Motorsport Cupra, with number 3 Audi from BF Motorsport closely in 2nd position. These are the 2 cars that have dominated proceedings so far, with the number 6 being fastest in FP1, which we had on Friday afternoon in dry conditions, whereas in the wet, it was the number 3 Audi who was quickest. But of course, Brigliadori bringing that familiar experience with the car, and of course, the family tradition which sees the Brigliadori family on racetracks from generations. Of course, his father raced in single-seaters and touring cars in the past, and of course his younger brother Eric won last year in the overall standings with Texaco Team AMS in the opening season of the history of the championship. Brigliadori trying to follow in his brother's footsteps this year. He's already familiar with TCR cars, Brigliadori, having raced in the mini challenge last year in the Coppa Italia Turismo in 2023 in Magione with great results.
Welcome back from the pit lane in Mugello. We have seen an amazing start of the race, as well our first interview. But first, our first pit reporter for this season, Alice Cecchi, officially welcome, and I leave the microphone to you.
Thank you, Antonio. We're here with Eric Scalvini. You started P2, you're currently P1. How's the race going?
Salvatore did an amazing start, and the pace at the moment is really good, and we will see the driver change, and in my stint I try to do my best. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Back to you.
Lovely to hear from our pit reporter today, Alice Cecchi, from the pits with Eric Scalvini, of course, the other driver of the number 6 crew, who's now leading the race after the first 15 minutes. Salvatore Tavano doing a great job to take the lead from Yuri Brigliadori during lap number 1. But now the BF Motorsport driver closing in, though in the last few laps, it was Tavano who was the quickest by just a matter of tenths, as now Brigliadori is trying to make some inroads, as we now see the replay of the start. And here it was the opening corner of the season with Brigliadori keeping the lead in the opening meters, with Tavano following closely behind in second position, and Pelatti also trying something around the outside of turn number 2. But Tavano stayed tight on the apex, and then with a switchback taking the place from Brigliadori, who's now trying to close in as they now cross the start-finish line to start lap number 9. It was a 58.7 for Tavano, 58.8 for Brigliadori, two being very closely matched, with Pelatti in third position, 159.5 for him, which is, yes, slower than the top 2, but it is his fastest time of the day, which means that the Italian is starting to find his rhythm in what will be likely his final 15 minutes in the car for stage number 1. Of course, all teams have to make a mandatory pit stop during both stages, with the minimum duration of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, while the teams will have to change driver and, of course, a minimum of 2 tires. And naturally, the strategic aspect of such a championship is so important, especially when talking about an endurance race format, which the TCR European Endurance has pushed forward since its introduction last year, promising great endurance action in a continental context, which of course is what the drivers always wanted, especially with those low fixed costs that make it easy for anyone to get access. As we now see, Brigliadori is still trying to make things work, as we now see the Volkswagen of Daniele Verrocchio still in the pit lane, with Faro Racing trying to work on the car. It was, of course, unfortunate for them to start off the season this way. We now here see Tavano and Brigliadori still closely matched, as the latter is trying to gain some tenths in this lap as well. We saw a great second sector from Brigliadori, who has now crossed the line, and he has in fact gained 3 tenths over Salvatore Tavano in the previous lap, at 58.7 for Brigliadori, 59 flat for Tavano and 59.9 for Sandro Pelati, who is now roughly 14 seconds off the lead. We also have to remember that Yuri Brigliadori is the de facto championship leader after yesterday. Of course, the championship awarding points for qualifying performance as well to the top 5. And so both Yuri Brigliadori and Alessandro Cidi getting 7 points for their pole position, with the number 6 crew getting 5 points to start off their 2025 season. As you now see, the teams watching closely from the pit lane. The pit stop window is approaching, of course. We will be having the first pit stops of the season, and we saw in the past how strategy could play an important role, a vital role even, in the proceedings of the race. Look at Brigliadori trying to push as hard as he can, sliding the car into one of the many chicanes of the track. As you now see, both drivers trying to tackle the final part of the circuit for what is the end of lap number 10 here in the opening stage of the season. And it's a battle between two different car makes. Of course, Cupra right now in the lead, but the car that has showed the most potential, arguably, in the dry, whereas the Audi has excelled in the wet yesterday. The dichotomy that fully represents the TCR scene, with different cars being very closely matched, which is the case in the DSG category as well, with Audi, Volkswagen, and Cupra being in the top 3. The latter one being in the lead with Senna Somerville right now in 4th position overall. Of course, the Jamaican driver making his debut in the championship with Wimmerberg Motorsport, a team that has adapted very quickly and very well indeed to such a complicated championship to adapt to, as Somerville has been the quickest driver, and of course Wimmerberg has been the quickest crew so far. But we now have confirmation of track limit warnings for car number 3, which is of course Yuri Brigliadori, who is now under a second behind Salvatore Tavano, of course trying to push as hard as he can. Brigliadori, it happens that a couple of track limit warnings could go his way. Tavano so far clear of them. The other car having track limits warnings is number 32 of Senna Somerville. Both having warnings on turn number 4, of course trying to use the exit curb as much as possible. We see the drivers being very aggressive, as Yuri Brigliadori is now on the back of Salvatore Tavano, and it will be very interesting to see whether Brigliadori tries to make a move before the pits, or if he will wait for the mandatory pit stop of this opening stage. Meaning, of course, that the number 3 will be trying a different strategy compared to number 6. As Brigliadori now is very close indeed to the back of Tavano. The number 6 trying to stay as close as possible to the right-hand side of the track, as Brigliadori now flashes his lights, trying to distract his rival. But of course, Tavano, being one of the most experienced and awarded drivers of the entire grid, he's not going to let that hinder his performance. Tavano now out of turn 3, trying to make his way towards the pits, where Eric Scalvini will be waiting. We heard from him and our pit reporter Alicia Cecchi a couple of minutes ago. Of course, we will be hearing from other drivers, and not only them, throughout not only this stage but the second one as well, which is set to start at 17:25 local time later today. As we now see Yuri Brigliadori in his Audi from BF Motorsport, the poleman and the championship leader after yesterday, making inroads on Salvatore Tavano, as Brigliadori now has received a 3rd track limit warning, so he has to be very careful because with a potential 4th track limit warning, he could receive a 5-second time penalty, which would be very difficult to handle and digest for the number 3 team, as we now see Tudor Motorsport getting ready for their pit stop. And of course, BF with Yuri's brother Eric on the right-hand side of the screen with the headphones. Of course, he was a driver last year and now has different duties this time for BF Motorsport after taking a title with Texaco Team AMS in 2024, with the Turkish outfit still present and still in the lead of one of the categories they are partaking in. This time it's the Gen 1 class, which they won last year. Of course, they swept all titles in 2024 with 3 cars. Now only 2 entries in the Gen 1 and DSG category respectively, with Briatore now being very close to Tavano. Let's see if he tries to do something up the inside of turn 1. He has a look on Tavano, slightly locking up the front right as well, but Tavano being able to take the car through a better trajectory into turn number 1 thanks to a wider line at the entry. So Tavano stays in first for now, but we were talking about Texaco Team AMS with Zekai Özen in the number 2 car, currently in 6th position overall, but crucially 2nd in the DSG standings, roughly 13 seconds behind class leader Senna Somerville, as we now see the pit stop phase ready to begin as teams are getting ready for the first pit stops of the season, whereas we have now a 10-second time penalty for failing to respect the starting procedure for the number 8 car of Edoardo Maccari, which is currently in 3rd place in the DSG standing. So this could change things, especially for the class podium, which would see Alessia Cidi in the number 38 come back into contention. Of course, both cars being managed by Tudor Motorsport, as we now see the communication that the pit window is in fact open. So let's see who will be the first one to dive into the pit lane to serve their mandatory pit stop. Of course, a minimum of 2 minutes and 15 seconds to spend in the pit lane from the moment that the pit limiter is engaged to the moment where it will be disengaged, meaning that the pit stop will be over, with both cars in the lead going on for at least another lap. Tavano and Brigliadori trying to push as hard as they can, building a gap to the number 3 car, sorry, the number 72 car in 3rd position of Sandro Pelatti. Of course, a gap that needs to be built, since Pelatti will likely be in at the end of this lap to hand the car to Franco Girolami, the Argentinian, the 3-time TCR champion from 2022 to 2024, looking for his 4th consecutive title in a TCR piece of machinery, as we now see the number 72 pulling into the pit lane. Pelatti ready to jump off the car, with Franco Girolami instead getting ready to start his race experience here in 2025 in the TCR European Endurance. Of course, this is a crew that already proved to be victorious in 2024, taking a race win in Misano in race number 3 of last year. Pelatti had made his debut in Vallelunga earlier for race number 2, though he had raced on his own in that event. And we also see one of the Texaco Team AMS cars, that's Sinan Shifci in the number 1, who's getting ready to take over from Ibrahim Okiai, the leaders of the Gen 1 category. As we also see Alessio Alcidi in the pit lane, with Luca Giovannoni getting ready to jump in the Volkswagen Golf GTI of Tudor Motorsport, who is effectively now fighting for 3rd place in the DSG standings after the 10-second time penalty handed to car number 8, which was a couple of seconds in front of Alcidi and Giovannoni. As the 2 leaders keep on going and start lap number 15, Yuri Brigliadori and Salvatore Tavano trying to keep going, though the number 6 seem to have pulled in, especially given that Brigliadori has jumped to the lead and he is now on his own. So it's likely that Tavano is in the pit lane, and we have confirmation that the 3-time TCR Italy champion has pulled in. Here it is with Wimmerwerk Motorsport doing the first ever pit stops, and we see Franco Girolami getting out of the pit lane. His pit stop now complete, and now Eric Scalvini rushes in to jump inside the car. We saw Salvatore Tavano having done his job, keeping first place after gaining it throughout lap number 1. And now all eyes are not only on the Wimmerwerk Motorsport crew, but of course on Yuri Brigliadori as well, who's trying to make the in-lap and the overcut work, although his strategy will likely be to go flat out until the pit stop, hopefully having an overspeed compared to the number 6. As we now see the number 32 jump into second position, Senna Somerville not pitting yet, as we now instead see the number 33 car of Daniele Verrocchio, who has managed to exit the pit lane. Let's remember he had an issue roughly 20 minutes ago to his front left tire. The team checking the engine bay and of course all systems, but he is able to jump back out of the pit lane, of course suffering a great loss, losing roughly 7 laps to the leader. But good thing is that the number 33 car is back out and ready. As we now see the cameras cutting to Franco Girolami, the Argentinian who's starting his racing journey stage-wise as of right now here in TCR European Endurance. Of course, the Argentinian needs no introduction, and we know that he's capable. We know that he is arguably one of the fastest drivers of the entire championship, and not only that, maybe even of the entire TCR racing world. And so we will be expecting great things and great times from the number 72 car, who has now dropped to 6th position, but of course that is because of strategy. Effectively, Girolami is in 3rd, trying to make some inroads on Eric Scalvini. The number 6 car now chased by the cameras as he exits the pit lane and is already into sector number 2. Yuri Brigliadori having a great time out there, still a 1 minute 59 flat, which is a great time for him. Let's remember, Brigliadori also has the fastest lap in a 1 minute 58 flat, registered on lap number 5, whereas with our secondary cameras, we see Senna Somerville in the pits, the leader of the DSG category, and really the dominant force of the class so far. The number 32 Wimmerwerk Motorsport car, who has been effectively leading both standings in this opening stage. But we also have Tudor Motorsport in the pits with their Audi number 8, Edoardo Macari, unfortunately getting that 10-second time penalty for failing to respect the starting procedure. Though Macari is now handing the car to Emilio Damante, who was one of the stars of qualifying yesterday in a wet Q2. He was able to get his car up into 4th, as the Tudor Motorsport number 8 Audi managed to finish in 6th position overall in qualifying after some of the times just narrowly missing out on that top 5 that gives out points for our drivers. As we now see Eric Scalvini handling the final corner and Yuri Brigliadori making his pit stop with 22 minutes and 50 seconds to go. Brigliadori will be handing over to Alessandro Alcidi, who was very quick yesterday, especially in the wet. The number 3 Audi being the dominant force in that moment of the weekend. Of course, having a colder track and a slightly damp track could help the number 3 car, especially with putting tires into the right temperature window. Though naturally, we saw how quick Salvatore Tavano was in the number 6. He has now unlapped himself after naturally going a lap down during the pit stop window. As we now see Scalvini trying to push as hard as he can. The gap over Franco Girolami is roughly 18 seconds. which seems to be a good buffer for 21 minutes and 50 seconds to go, of course, plus the additional lap that we will be having at the end of each stage. Where the communication now that the pit window is closing, and so everyone needs to be at least inside the pit lane, which is the case for every single one of our drivers, which is very nice to see. So no issues on that front, with Yuri Brigliadori handing the car over to Alessandro Cidi, BF Motorsport still working on their Audi, trying to give the team the best possible chance. So let's see if the number 3 has done a great job, or if the number 6 will emerge as the de facto leader of the race. But it seems like BF Motorsport has done a great job, because Alessandro Cidi is already on his way towards the exit of the pit lane, whereas Alessio Cidi is now behind, and especially number 6 of Eric Scalvini is only now going towards the start-finish line. So there has been a change of lead, with the number 3 car effectively making the overcut work, which gives the lead back to BF Motorsport, with Alessandro Cidi to the wheel of the Audi. Though let's see how quickly those tires will get into temperature. But look at Franco Girolami. We said we were expecting some great things out of him, and he wasted no time in gaining roughly 3 seconds in one lap over Eric Scalvini at 1 minute 57.7, which is the fastest lap of the race. Not by much, just 2.5 tenths over the previous best lap of the stage, which was registered by the car number 3, driven at the time by Yuri Brigliadori, now by Alessandro Cidi, who is our race leader with a 16-second gap over Eric Scalvini. The pit phase really benefiting BF Motorsport, who looks to have everything nailed down to the T. As of course, Alessandro Cidi will now have to keep his nerves in the final 19 minutes and 25 seconds of stage number 1. Of course, let's remember that these results will not only be useful to declare the starting grid for stage number 2, but as of 2025, each stage will give valuable points for the entire championship. As we now see a move up the inside, goes the number 38 car on the number 2, and that is Luca Giovannoni, making an immediate impact, overtaking series rookie Berk Karpakleoglu in the number 2. Karpakleoglu making a transition this year from karting to track racing. He has already...
We are here with Sandro Pelatti. Sandro, com'è andata la prima parte di gara?
È stata una parte un po' difficile perché le condizioni della pista ancora non erano proprio perfette. Io non me la sentivo di spingere, perché comunque l'obiettivo nostro era quello, abbiamo fatto una strategia di lunga durata, quindi l'obiettivo era quello di portare la macchina sana e salva a Franco per far fare uno stint un po' più lungo a lui in seconda parte della prima ora. E la pista ancora non era in condizioni, specialmente dietro, nella curva 1, 2, 3, molto bagnata, e quindi bisognava guidare un attimino. Chi si è preso più rischi ha fatto un po' la differenza, ma la gara è ancora tutta aperta. Abbiamo un buon passo, abbiamo un buon potenziale, speriamo che questo tempo che ci sta perseguitando da 7 giorni sia un po' clemente per l'ultima ora di gara.
Grazie. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thank you so much to Alicia Cecchi and Sandro Pelatti, who was talking to Alicia about the first half of this opening stage. He said, of course, that the track is still quite damp and it's not in its ideal conditions. He didn't want to make any mistakes, so he carefully treaded around the track to try and give Franco the car as early as he could. Different strategy compared to the top 2 drivers, but Pelatti was quite happy about his proceedings, and he will now have a look at the standings and see that Franco, his teammate and dear friend, is gaining over Alessandro Cidi. Though the number 3 car is now trying to push, despite getting and receiving a 3rd track limit warning. So both car number 3 and car number 32 have received said warnings, but so far so good for both drivers and both teams, who are penalty free inside the opening 40 minutes of the race. So let's see at the start finish line how Girolami is doing, and he has gained 3.5 seconds over Alessandro Alcidi, though we are ready to go back to the pit lane with our pit reporter Alicia Cecchi, who has another one of our drivers, so we're ready to listen to his thoughts.
And we're back in the pit lane with Salvatore Tavano. Salvatore, sei partito secondo, sei subito riuscito a prendere la prima posizione. Come è andata questa prima parte di gara?
Sì, direi bene fino ad ora, incrociamo le dita. Eric ha fatto un ottimo lavoro anche lui, ma per l'intero weekend devo dire ci siamo subito trovati, abbiamo trovato il feeling. Ora dobbiamo prendere un po' le misure con queste manche da 55 minuti, siamo abituati sia io che Eric a delle gare un po' più brevi, quindi insomma stiamo studiando sotto quel profilo, ma siamo fiduciosi.
Grazie mille. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Alice, and that was the former leader Salvatore Tavano having to explain the situation, of course, saying that the track is still not optimal, but he was happy about his stint. And now watching over Eric Scalvini, who has gained the lead back from Alessandro Alcidi, the latter making a mistake a couple of laps ago, losing quite a lot of ground. And so the number 6 car is now back in the lead, which is great news for Wimmerwerk Motorsport, and not such a great news for the number 3 BF Motorsport Audi, who now has to defend from Franco Girolami's comeback. Now the gap only 7.5 seconds between the number 3 and the number 72. Alcidi now crossing the line, the 2-minute 0.5. Scalvini lapping with a 1 minute 59.2, so gaining 1.3 seconds in the previous lap. As we now see Franco Girolami crossing the line, 1 minute 58.3, which is a great time for the number 72, who's now attacking the BF Motorsport car. And talking about BF Motorsport, it's Alice Cecchi back in the pit lane. We were talking about Yuri Brigliadori, and now it's his brother Eric.
We're back in the pit lane with Yuri Brigliadori, currently sitting in P2. You started on pole position. First of all, tell us about your qualifying round.
Yeah, it was a good qualifying for us, but to be honest, Salvatore in the first 3 or 4 laps was faster than me, and then I start to find the feeling with the car, and I start to gain some time, but yeah, I didn't success in overtake him, but yeah, Alessandro now is on the car, and we'll see our result at the end of the race.
It's your debut in this championship. How are you finding it so far?
Yeah, it's my debut also in TCR race car. So it was my first time, and I'm really happy to be here in this championship. And yeah, we'll see in the next race what happens.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you so much to Alice Cecchi and Yuri Brigliadori, the former pole sitter and leader of the race for the opening 3 corners, before being overtaken by Salvatore Tavano, although Brigliadori was very good at staying with his rival, as we now see the DSG leader, Senna Somerville, in car number 32. The Jamaican making an immediate impact thanks to his coach, Christopher Issa. Of course, a legend in Jamaican motorsport, rallying, and not only that, as Somerville is one of the most promising young Jamaican drivers in the racing world, making his debut in Europe in 2024 in Arak GT4 Germany, taking a podium in the season finale, showing just how good he can be, and he showed just that throughout the opening few sessions of the season. Wimmerwerk Motorsport bringing 2 cars to the table, 2 Cupras which seem to be very quick and now leading both the overall standings as well as the DSG category. The Gen 1 class instead being led by Texaco Team AMS, the reigning team's champions, and of course the reigning Gen 1 champions as well, with car number 1, Sinan Çiftçi, making his second appearance in the championship after racing in the season finale last year in Misano, where he took the win in the Gen 1 category, so showing just how good he can adapt to that car, as we now see the battle ready to start between Alessandro Cidi and Franco Girolami, the latter gaining and gaining over his rival for second place, whereas Eric Scalvini's lead seems to be comfortable enough for him to focus on bringing the car home, though Alcidi is roughly only 7 seconds behind Scalvini, but with 11 minutes to go, the latter's biggest threat seems to be Franco Girolami, although an 11-second gap is quite a big one to make up in such a short amount of time. But of course, every single second matters, as we know that the final standings after the two stages will be created by summing the times of both stage 1 and stage 2. So the closest Girolami can get to Eric Scalvini, the better for the number 72 PMA Motorsport car. Of course, PMA, a team founded in 2009 and that has lots of experience in TCR racing, especially in TCR Italy and TCR European Endurance, where they made their debut in Vallelunga last year for round number 2 before taking their first win in Misano, looking to score their second one here in Mugello to start off their 2025 title campaign in the best possible way, which was what BF Motorsport has done so far, taking 4 points in qualifying with pole position, and Bimmerwerk Motorsport trying to follow suit with a phenomenal performance so far in stage number 1. Scalvini now building a 7.7 second gap over Alessandro Alcidi, who now sees Franco Girolami in his rearview mirror. Only 3 seconds between the two, so it's likely that Girolami will catch back to the car in front of him by the end of the next lap, as he seems to be getting roughly 2 seconds per lap on the number 3. Alessandro Alcidi making his way through the final sector, the last few corners before starting lap number 23. Girolami now has to try and attack the number 3 car without losing too much ground from Eric Scalvini in the lead. The Italian, though, being very consistent so far. Another 159.7 sub 2 minute lap time that is very good, especially with a couple of used tires on his car. The team only changing 2 of them at the pit stop. As we now see Franco Girolami taking a wider line into turn 1 to try and maximize the exit, especially now that with only 8 minutes and 13 seconds to go, the race is on for second position, as Franco Girolami is getting closer to the back of Alessandro Cidi. Girolami that, of course, he has made up such a huge ground, especially in the last few minutes with an impressive pace. Girolami, now it will be interesting to see where he tries the attack on the number 3 car. Alessandro Cidi being very consistent, though he knows how quick Girolami is, and he also has to think about his own race. Though with only 7 minutes and 38 seconds to go, it's natural to think that Alessandro Cidi will try his best to keep the 3-time TCR champion behind him. Girolami, though, very interested in taking second position away from the BF Motorsport Audi. PMA now attached to the back of the number 3 car. Girolami studies his opponent. He needs to see where he's vulnerable, maybe towards turn 1 or maybe even before that into the final turn, though it'll be hard to make a move before such a long straight, so probably Girolami will wait until the end of the lap to try and start his attack. As now both drivers make their way towards the start of lap number 24 in the opening stage of the 2025 TCR European Endurance season, with Girolami now close to the back of the number 3 car. Let's see if he tries something towards turn 1. Alessandro Alcidi will likely be defending the position to the inside. A couple of lapped cars in front, but that's no issue so far for the number 3. Alcidi has to go to the inside. Let's see if Girolami tries the move around the outside. He tries to brake as late as he can, though the number 3 car placed itself very well. Great job from Alessandro Alcidi, especially in defensive duties, though Girolami tries to switch back towards turn number 2. There's no space, however, for the number 72 to find its way towards second position. So Alessandro Alcidi holds on for now, as in front of them it's Faro against Tudor for a spot on the DSG podium. But now we see the fight for second place overall, as Alcidi is now into sector 2. Great defensive action from Alessandro Alcidi, of course. He has probably the toughest job out of everyone on the grid so far, having to defend from the 3-time TCR champion Franco Girolami, who is looking for his 4th title here in TCR European Endurance this season. They now have to navigate through traffic, which could be a very, very important factor. But intelligently, the Faro Racing Volkswagen takes the outer line into the chicane, meaning that both the number 3 and the number 72 can go through, as now Girolami is very close to the back of Alcidi. Let's see if he can make a move. Maybe even the final corner, though, as we said before, with such a long straight, it's very difficult to set up a move into turn number 15, the long left-hander that brings us to the start-finish line. And once again, Girolami tries to get a wider line to have a better exit, then take the slipstream, though Alcidi has a very important friend in the Touring Motorsport Audi in front of him to take the slipstream and defend from the number 72 car. Girolami not happy, of course, with the lapped car giving the slipstream to his opponent, though that's just the luck of racing that sometimes goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. This time around, it's Alcidi who benefits from the lapped car, as he's able to defend pretty easily with 4 minutes and 17 seconds to go, though the assault is very much not over, as Girolami will also have an additional lap to try and make the move stick. Both drivers now making their way towards turns number 4 and 5. The most crucial ones actually for track limits as well, though the number 3 is still on 3 track limit warnings at risk of a penalty, though Alcidi has been very diligent in his stint so far. Franco Girolami instead is free from warning, so he can push just that tiny bit more. That could be a help for the Audi of PMA Motorsport in the battle for second position. In front, Eric Scalvini has built an 11-second gap, and so his stage win seems to be secured so far, though he has to make sure that he doesn't make any mistakes, which is the same, of course, for Alessandro Alcidi, who now sees Girolami very close to the back of him. Let's see if he tries something into turn number 12. He has a look to the inside, but he's very good, Alcidi, isn't he, to close the door on Girolami and keep second position, as we now see Alcidi trying to maximize his exit. Let's see how both take the final corner, with Alcidi having a slight lockup to the front left and going wide into the final turn, which could be crucial to let Franco Girolami through, and that is the case with the number 72 car now up into second position. PMA Motorsport watching on as Girolami now has to defend into turn 1. Let's see if Alcidi has the overspeed from the wider line into the final turn to make the move stick, though Girolami seems to have everything under control as he looks to the inside of turn 1. He doesn't even have to defend, and so a slight mistake from Alessandro Alcidi is crucial to let Sandro Pelatti and Franco Girolami through. The number 72 crew now up into second position, with Girolami putting the pressure on his opponent and making it work. And here you can see all the experience coming from the number 72 driver. Girolami now up into second position, and now let's see if Alcidi can stick to the back of him and maybe even try a move back to the inside, maybe at the start of the next lap, though Girolami now seems to be in control of proceedings. We saw briefly Eric Scalvini and his 12.6 second gap growing lap after lap, especially due to this battle, but great stuff for both drivers. Of course, it's a shame to see Alcidi making that slight mistake, but he was so good at defending in the previous 10 minutes. But unfortunately, he had to let off the brake before having to rescue the car from the gravel trap out of the final corner. But that tiny bit of a lockup, meaning everything in this fight for the second place, as Franco Girolami is now through to second position, and he will now be looking to build a gap over Alessandro Alcidi, and of course to gain some time over Eric Scalvini. Let's remember that the results from stage 1 will be summed to the stage 2 final standings to create the overall classification of race number 1. So every single 10th matters, as Girolami has now gained 5 tenths in the second sector on Eric Scalvini. And here he is, the leader of stage number 1 with 30 seconds to go, so roughly 2 laps left. Since we will be getting an additional one at the end of the time shown to the top left. And so Eric Scalvini now has to push, and he cannot let off the throttle for a single second. Of course, having Franco Girolami behind him, who is trying to gain as much time as possible. Behind them in the DSG category, it's still Senna Summerbell in the lead with a hefty 38-second gap over Luca Giovannoni, who has made his way up to second position. At Tuna Motorsport Volkswagen Golf working wonders in the race, overtaking Emilio Davanti and the Texaco team AMS pair of Karel Pakoglu and Zekai Özen, who were second at the start of the stage, though they have now gone back down to fourth, as we now see Eric Scalvini navigating the final few corners of lap number 27. And what a performance from Scalvini, and of course Salvatore Tavano making a statement right from the beginning in FP1, showing their pace. And now not only that, also strategy and consistency, which enabled them to take the lead in the first few corners and keep it, as now Scalvini rounds out the final corner of stage 1. And what a performance it was from the number 6 crew, who is now getting ready to see the checkered flag and take the lead from stage number 1. It's Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano in the number 6 Cupra Leon competition of Wimmenberg Motorsport that end stage number 1 in the lead. A phenomenal performance from them, as Franco Girolami and Sandro Pelatti finish in second after an extraordinary battle with the number 3 of Alessandro Alcidi, who was great in defense, but unfortunately a slight lockup into the final corner cost him second position. At the end, the gap between Scalvini and Girolami is 11.3 seconds, with the Argentinian having a 3-second gap over Alessandro Alcidi. The DSG lead is kept by Senna Summerbell, with the Wimmenberg Motorsport Cupra, who will be in the lead at the start of stage 2 in the category, just in front of Luca Giovannoni and Emilio Damante, with Sinan Cifci in the number 1 Texaco Team AMS Gen 1 Audi that leads its standings together with Ibrahim Okiai. And here you can see the race highlights with the Audi of Yuri Brigliadori in the lead at the start of the race, but then of course the number 6 of Salvatore Tavano and Eric Scalvini taking the lead after just a couple of corners. And the fight then going on in the DSG standings. And on the highlights, I want to thank you for staying with us for the first stage, but don't go anywhere. Stage number 2 will be starting at 17:25 local time. Of course, a very important, a crucial stage where we will be seeing just how close all teams are. And of course, we will be deciding the first overall winners and class winners of the 2025 season here in Mugello, the first of 5 races that will take us all the way through to November, where we will be deciding who the champion is. So thanks for staying with us. We'll see each other for stage 2 at 17:25 local time, with Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano wanting to take home the victory, and Franco Girolami, Sandro Pelatti, and of course the number 3 car of Yuri Brigliadori and Alessandro Alcidi following close by. Thanks for staying with us, and we'll see each other for stage number 2 later today.